Not long after the previous video titled A Close Look into the Reveal trailer was released, a couple of viewers were kind enough to leave comments that provided crucial information, such as the identity of the winged fish symbol, courtesy of Afik and Vitsobotka. As it turns out, that coat of arms belongs to the Lords of Burgau, and we're now quite certain who these betrayers are. An equally interesting bit of news shared by Spokeshav and Tristan is the existence of several Warhorse Studios developer interviews, which prompted me to watch them. And in this presentation, I will share with you what I found out, as well as my thoughts about them. Sir Tobias's talk through Knights Arcade was conducted in English, while the conversation with Mr. Jirsa through Indian and the making of KCD2 via Vortex have subtitles. Unfortunately, that feature is absent from Mr. Bokan's dialogue with Reflex CZ, so I had to rely on machine translation, which is not an ideal method, but I managed to make sense of it at least. Before we begin, I would just like to give a quick heads up that we'll focus on the most important ones we should all be aware of, and the rest you can check out later if you wish. Alright, let's do this. For the most part, a lot of the mechanics that worked for KCD1 have been retained and enhanced, such as the skill system, which from the way Mr. Jirsa described it, still gives us free rein on what to improve upon by not constraining our options through a branching skill tree found in other titles. The overall structure of quests, in conjunction with the open world design, have mostly been carried over to the sequel as well. Not to mention its saving system through savior snaps, which are now apparently easier to obtain, but no further details about it are available. Regardless, this feature is supported by more considered autosave points, which aims to prevent Rs of lost progress. One key system which has undergone a major change is the melee combat, but the only piece of concrete information came from Mr. Jirsa, who said that the attack zones have been reduced from 5 to 4. We also know that weapons are split into two broad categories, composed of simple ones that are easy to use, like maces, and those that require training to maximize its potential, such as the longsword. What this means for how well those two classes will interact with each other along with their combination attacks is still unknown. If, for example, I were to equip Henry with a simple weapon, such as an axe, and I had to fight a master swordsman, will we be able to stand toe-to-toe with them, or are we at risk of getting overwhelmed by counterattacks? Speaking of which, regarding Master Strikes, Mr. Bokan said that they redesigned it to something that would still allow us to attack and defend at the same time, which sounds like the same thing. What I'm hoping the sequel would avoid altogether is a singular move which overpowers everything else, and can also be used by both sides without any limitation. Unfortunately, it's impossible to assess this without hands-on experience, so we'll just have to wait and see. With regards to the game's two maps, we have official confirmation from Sir Tobias that we'll be able to go back and forth between them after doing a series of story missions. In addition, Mr. Hoschel said in the Vortex video that the first map around Trotsky region is smaller, but the landscapes are varied, while the area around Kutenberg is much larger, and the layout of the city itself will also take longer to memorize, based on the way he described it. One interesting detail related to the early main story missions was also revealed by Sir Tobias. He said that something will happen to Henry and will be working with his stats from scratch. It so happens that in the trailer, there is a shot where he seems to be injured, with matching nightmare flashbacks similar to those seen in KCD1. I think this is what he's referring to. Henry will be gravely wounded somewhere at the beginning of the game, which will essentially soft reset his character. Since KCD2 is a hero-focused RPG and not a real-time strategy game, our protagonist is just going to be a participant in big battles, like castle sieges, which makes a lot of sense. At the very least, we'll be able to do several things in those kinds of missions, but it's not yet clear as to what those are. Maybe we'll get to operate a trebuchet, but I'm not sure. For now, we'll just focus on the portable ranged weapons. According to Mr. Bokan, there are several types of crossbows in the game. The only ones we saw in the reveal video are light ones, which can be armed by hand, and those that use a goat's foot lever. Hopefully there will also be heavy siege crossbows that require a windlass to operate. That would be a nice addition too. As for firearms, the developers who talked about it basically said the same thing. It's devastating to a target if they get hit, but the weapon has a lot of downsides, and it's what they mainly focused on saying. For example, Mr. Bokan said, "Since we're in Kingdom Come, let's not do a medieval shooter where you run around and shoot 2 rifles and an entire army like that. It's just inaccurate, it's ugly, it's noisy, it's annoying. It's terribly hard to shoot from ambush because you just make such a shot that the whole forest just wakes up." This is basically his way of saying that they're a neat inclusion to the game, but are considered novelties, and therefore would most likely have limited use case scenarios, until modifications come along anyway. From the moment KCD2 was announced, the developers made it very clear when the story shall begin. The most detailed answer came from Mr. Vavra himself, who said it takes place 2 days after KCD1 concluded. In the same Vortex video, Mr. Bokan also says, "In the first game at the end, Henry rides into the woods. In the second game, he rides out of the woods." In addition, Luke Dale mentions the story's early event in the reveal video.
As a trusted squire and friend to young Sir Hans, our hero Henry is sent on a simple mission, but things turn ugly very soon.
In KCD2's official website, it's written that the incident he's referring to is an ambush, which is also what starts off their adventure. I stand by my assumption that this shot closely matches what we just described. Henry is in the middle among bodies of allies, while his tiny figure in the frame is surrounded by 3 imposing characters, where the left and right units are both armed with a ranged weapon. Its composition clearly denotes that a surprise attack just happened in this scene. As to when this game might take place, the best clue that we have is one given by Sir Tobias in the written IGN interview by Kat Bailey. In one response, he stated that Henry gets thrown into the conflict of an invading king versus the people of Bohemia. Mr. Vavra also said in the reveal video, "The story is longer and much more epic. Previously it was about issues of small nobility with bandits in their villages. Now it's about problems of kings. This means the backdrop of KCD2's narrative is still centered around Sigismund's conquest of Bohemia. It's the reason why I suggested in the previous video that the entire game might take place in 1403, because a couple of important things happened surrounding him within that same year. I'm telling you all of these factors because I've pondered on the possibility for a significant passage of time to occur, and based on what we know so far, the chances of that happening is very slim. The origin of this time jump speculation is centered around the question of why Henry looks a lot more mature, even though the sequel immediately picks up where the first one left off. It's indeed quite perplexing. However, if something like that did happen, it would mean all of the events in the trailer where he's visible, such as the ambush and castle defense, happened after the time skip, which is unlikely because the so-called problems of kings was resolved in 1405, when a peace agreement was signed. And it's downright impossible for Henry to grow from this to this in a matter of a year and a half. So I think a simpler explanation for this conundrum is that Henry was designed to look more mature as an artistic choice, so his physical appearance lines up with the story theme of him being all grown up and getting involved with important matters. After all, Sir Tobias said this in the IGN interview. In KCD1, Henry grew from a boy to a man, and now in KCD2, he is growing from a man to a warrior.
Congratulations, Sir Knight. You finally become a man.
Those were my observations from the Warhorse Studios developer interviews. Thank you to all those who left informative comments in the previous video. I highly appreciate it. If you have anything to share about today's topic, feel free to write about it in the comment section and I'll check them out.